Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Total Truth Show. And here on the Total Truth Show, we want to help you break free from the lies and propaganda of the mainstream media, all the disinformation and misinformation. We want to help you blast through all of that. And my name is Ken Kleinberg, coming to you all the way from the USA, San Diego, California.
And I'm Aldwyn Altuney, known as the Media Queen, from the Gold Coast in Australia.
There is a great awakening happening in the world right now, and you're going to want to come along for the ride.
A lot of lies are coming to the surface. There's a lot of awakening happening, and as this awakening is happening, people realize they've been deceived for years. They've been lied to for years around all sorts of things. A lot of people have been blind to what has been going on in the world, and now they're starting to see. They're starting to see things in a different light.
Through our show, we want to raise global consciousness to quantum critical mass. And we don't want you just to accept the things that we're saying. That goes for our guests as well. We want you to do the research for yourself. Get out there and start questioning things. Start looking things up. Do the research. We want to pave the way for a new awakened world. And we want you to come along for the ride. So with that, let's get started, you guys. Let's dive into today's episode. Once again, welcome.
Welcome to Total Truth Show, episode 119. The truth about adversity is our topic today. And we have, of course, my co-host all the way from San Diego. How are you going today, Ken?
Doing good.
Excellento. And we have a fantastic guest with us, Richard Crowle from Sydney. So a little bit about Richard before we chat with him. He is a keynote speaker and an adventurer with 20 years of experience in the education sector. He has cycled over 40,000 kilometers across 30 countries through some of the world's most remote and inhospitable terrain. This extraordinary journey, captured on film, provides a compelling backdrop to his keynote presentations, inspiring audiences to trust their intuition, to take risks and unlock their full potential. A qualified carpenter with a degree in anthropology, Richard has published articles about his travels, appeared on TV, has been featured on podcasts, sharing powerful insights on personal growth and the transformative power of embracing life's challenges and moving forward in the face of adversity. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Thank you.
Great to have you here. Oh my gosh, what a journey. That is absolutely epic. 40,000 kilometers across 30 countries on a bicycle. Oh my gosh, you must have so many stories to share there of how you've overcome adversity. But, you know, what brought you to that point in the first place to do that?
It's something that was never envisaged in its totality. And it's something that I hadn't ever dreamed of as a young kid. But it was from one idea, and this idea came. I'd been living in Europe for a number of years, working and traveling, and I'd work again. And so I'd be cashed up with summers full of money from working, and I'd either hitchhike through Europe, maybe go backpacking, catch a train, catch a bus. And so I was really enamored by the idea of traveling, and thought of, well, I haven't really cycled anywhere. And I saw this one guy in France riding a bike, and he traveled some distance. So it had been nearly 2.5 years I'd been away, and I thought, well, maybe now it's time to return home. Why don't you go home for Christmas? And to do that, I thought, well, if I fly into Cairns is 3,000 kilometers north of Sydney. I've got 90 days to do it. Is that going to work? So this is what's going through my head at the time. I'm 23 years old and full of ambition and ignorance. So I thought, well, if I did 100 kilometers a day, it would take me 30 days. But there's no way that I could cycle 100 kilometers a day. So if I did 50 kilometers a day, it would only take me 60 days, and I've still got 30 days left over. And the maths worked out. So that was for me the green light. And then the extent of my planning came down to, I flew into Cairns, and I arrived into Cairns one Sunday afternoon. And I remember this distinctly because it's in a tropical climate, which I'd never really experienced. And I was dressed for an English winter. And that night I went down to the Cairns mud flats and overlooked the mud there. And I bought a 6-pack of beer and a barbecue chook. So it's like, welcome back to Australia. And a couple of the local boys, they befriended me, my 6-pack of beer and my barbecue chook. And so I ended up, with those couple of fellas I'd met. We slept rough that night under a tree just at the back of the car park of the shopping centre. And then the next morning they were off doing their thing. So come Monday morning, so I've arrived from England Sunday night. Come Monday morning, I found my way to a bike shop and I bought a push bike. And then from there, I went down to a camp store and I bought a little bit of camping equipment. And then I found my way to the post office. And back then, and I'm not sure if you can still do it now, I could post my backpack down to the Sydney GPO, Sydney Post Office, to pick up at a later date. So I sent my backpack down to the Sydney GPO. And Monday evening, so less than 24 hours after arriving in Cairns, I cycled north out of Cairns to then commence this 3,000-kilometre journey. Now, I did buy a map too, and the map, when I looked at it, it showed that Sydney was all downhill from there. So I was invigorated by that. But that first night, I was 10 k's out of Cairns just to get on the road. My tent was more of a triangulated piece of plastic. And as I mentioned, I hadn't been in the tropics before, so I didn't quite understand it. And my year 9 geography, I obviously didn't resonate with me because I'm lying under this piece of plastic. The rain's bucketing down, but it's stifling hot, and I couldn't quite understand what was going on. And that was the inauguration of my journey, which then sort of was taking me up through the Atherton Tablelands and then back down onto the Bruce Highway to make my way towards Sydney. So it was not fully planned or thought out, but it was just an idea that I thought I would action and deal with things as I come across them.
Wow. And what was some of the challenges you faced on that journey?
So the whole journey was hard to anticipate everything that would happen. And interestingly enough, I never spoke to my parents really about this. And for me, the idea was I was just going to surprise mum. So I didn't really tell anyone I was in the country. So I knew no other people that had done the cycling. And it was just a matter of trial and error. And Orson Welles has this wonderful quote in that there's opportunity in ignorance, because you don't know what can't be done. And that was how he undertook the producing, directing of Citizen Kane, which was a highly awarded film. He said, I'll do it my way because I haven't done it before. And so there was nothing stopping me from undertaking this. My head wasn't full of what ifs or doubts. It was just what I was facing along the way. And importantly, you can't anticipate all the things that are going to occur anyhow. So you can't spend your life planning for what might not happen. And there's no way you can think of the stuff that will happen. So there was a time that was from Rockhampton to Mackay. It's 300 kilometres and there's nothing there. It's just barren land. It's a 2-way highway, so it's not wide. You've got a rough shoulder, gravel, and then it's just barren landscape as far as you can see. It was hot, and so I was transporting a flotilla of flies on my back. And as you're pedaling along, on the shoulder of the road, you've got all this roadkill. It's like chip packets of the footy. They're just littered all the way down the highway. So you're pedaling along, and you have to be mindful to avoid them. But as you do that, you've got to sometimes come out into the middle of the lane of the road. Now, up in far north Queensland, it's a lot of grazing land, and you've got all these road trains full of stock that are being transported. So as you go out to the lane of the road, you've then got these road trains that come barreling by. And when they do that, they create this, it's like a vortex that sort of sucks the bike in under the wheels, but the wheels keep going and going and going past you. And then you get the brake of the road train, so it sort of stops, and then it keeps going when the next carriage of the road train comes. So here I am barreling down the Bruce Highway into a headwind in the peak of, well, it was October, so in the build up to the wet season. I'm dodging the roadkills so I don't run into them and they can explode on you. I'm watching out for the road trains coming over my shoulders so they don't suck me under during magpie season. Now, Ken, I don't know if you know about the magpies in Australia, but they're a native bird, and what they do is they come down from behind and they swoop and peck you at the ear. And it's really frightening when you're on a bike just in suburbia. And so here I am getting attacked by these magpies as I'm pedaling along. Now, someone driving north has seen this bloke in the middle of nowhere, dodging out for the roadkill, watching out for the road trains, and I was swinging an ocky strap, so an elastic strap above me head to keep the magpies away. Now, there was no sense in it, and perhaps if I knew that that's what I'd be doing, I might have thought twice about it. But you just play what's in front of you and you get through each and every day.
Wow, that's extraordinary. I know that stretch of road because I worked at the Daily Mercury in Mackay as a journalist for nearly 2 years back in 95 or so. So I know that stretch. And I know even driving down that stretch in a car is very challenging because there is nothing in that area. And I know back then too, there was a lot more roadkill than there is now because we've killed so many of the animals now. You know, there's not as many animals around, but I do remember back when we were doing trips up north in the car 20, 30 years ago, there was so much roadkill. So I can just imagine how challenging that was for you. And the magpies, of course, they swoop to protect their babies, etc. They're not, you know, they don't always deliberately go out of their way to peck at you. And they're not always like that, but you do get some that will go for you in mating season. So, Australia's got a very bad reputation for our deadly animals and all that kind of thing. But most of our animals are very friendly. They pretty much do their own thing, unless we get in their way usually. So that's extraordinary that you did that. Absolutely extraordinary. And as you say, you deal with one challenge at a time. You don't know what's going to come before you. So looking back at that journey, what were some of the biggest learnings for you around adversity?
It was just building a self-belief that you can take every day as it comes. There was a lot of discomfort in that I was often just sleeping rough out in the scrub, in parks, on beaches, things in that way. And that was okay because, again, it comes back to this idea of expectations. And one of the greatest things that can create problems is if we place expectations on something. It happens in relationships. If you put expectations and then those expectations aren't met, it can lead to conflict. And, you know, if I was expecting good weather, but then got bad weather, it would throw me. But if I wasn't expecting any good weather, then the bad weather was not uncommon. What was interesting was I had a mate in England before I left, and Chris was from his parents were from Townsville, an Indigenous fella, and he said, make sure you look up Mum when you head down there. And so I did that, and I've rung Irene and said, all right, I'm on my way. I'll be in Townsville tomorrow. She said, absolutely, come around. And she gave me the directions of where to meet up. And so remember, we're all pre-mobile phone era. So, all right, I'm on my way to Irene's place. And as I'm following the instructions, I sort of hit Townsville and I'm taking different directions, but it didn't sort of make sense to me. And I pulled up into a servo and thought, I'll see if I can find a phone and give her a call to what's going on. And as I'm about to do that, Irene comes. There's a lady, well, I didn't know it was Irene, in a car hanging out the window going, Richard, is that you? And it was Irene. And what she'd realised she'd done is given me the directions as if I was coming from the south heading north. not the north heading south. So she's realised this, knew it made no sense, and then jumped in the car and come to fetch me. And so we had a great time with her, and the hospitality was amazing. And what she did was she set me up then down the whole east coast of Queensland. She got out her address book and gave me all these contacts on the way. Now, perhaps these days I might be reluctant or not as open to just ringing these people that I didn't know. And so I would make contact with these people, and their first question is, "Oh, Irene, how's Irene? She's great." And they would welcome me into their home. And what was for me insightful was being the only white fella, and trust me, I was super white, in this place full of 20 Indigenous people or 30 Indigenous people having a barbecue, welcoming me into their home. And it was quite enlightening being the minority and just the hospitality I received. One lady, this was down in Gladstone, she said, "How's Irene?" I said, "Oh, she's really good," and talked a bit about her. And she goes, "Oh, I haven't heard from Irene in 20 years. And so here she is still offering these addresses. And here I am taking people up on this invite. And it gave you a wonderful insight into people's lives and an experience that was rich heading down the coast. You weren't sort of, if you're a tourist, you're going to a one destination to the other and looking at sites. You're really immersing yourself in the local communities and at their whim as to the hospitality they offer. And that's something I didn't expect, and it was a beautiful thing. And I still call Chris today, and we often talk about these experiences.
I love that. A lot of our country people here in Australia are very friendly, although we do have a few psychos out in the country as well. So you find them everywhere, but mostly country people are very down to earth and very friendly, and that's wonderful that you had that hospitality and also connected with our Indigenous Australians as well. That's really wonderful. There's so much we can learn from our Indigenous cultures that go back millions of years, and how they lived off the land, etc. It's interesting how much life has changed, I'm sure, since there were just Indigenous Aboriginals in Australia. Since white settlement, things have rapidly changed there. And, adversity can mean different things to different people, but generally adversity is some kind of challenge that you overcome, right? And, just looking up a little bit about adversity online, it says it's a powerful teacher that can build strength. And our reaction to it, or our response, is more important than what actually happens itself. So it's how you respond to the adversity of life. And I want to welcome our live viewers today. Charles Caldwell, good to see you there from Hong Kong, is joining in on LinkedIn. Great to see you. We've got people here on Facebook, on YouTube. Welcome wherever you're joining us from. Let us know, where are you joining us from right now? And if you have anything you would like to add to this conversation, any questions for us as we're going through the show, then please pop them in the comments. We do like to make this an interactive show. Now, one of my favorite quotes is, "There's a breakthrough at the end of every breakdown." A breakthrough at the end of every breakdown. So the thing to get, I believe, with life, with our roller coaster ride journey of life, with all the ups and downs that happen through life, is when we have the low moments in life, is to get the learning from those low moments, because I do believe everything happens for you, not to you as well. Another one of my favorite quotes, and something I constantly remind myself whenever I get triggered by something: everything happens for you, not to you. And sometimes you're not aware at the time, when the adversity is happening or when the challenge is happening, how it's happening for you. But there's a reason we make the choices we make. And life is basically a series of choices, right? And, you've made some very brave choices there, Richard, and you survived it, right? And what an experience. I mean, I don't know how many people in Australia would have done that kind of journey. I mean, do you know, have there been many people that have done that kind of trip that you have?
Look, I wouldn't know specifically. However, while cycling around Australia, I would meet people doing a similar thing.
Okay.
I met once down the east coast of Australia. I was between Sydney and Melbourne, a Japanese fella, and he was cycling up north. Now, his map was a postcard of Australia. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's a bit fraught with danger, young man. But, people, again, were living the dream. And it goes back to that idea of, opportunity and ignorance. And so I know for myself, as I progressed in the nature of my journeys, I started going more extreme. And by that, it was, say, within Australia, taking more remote routes. Now, crossing Australia, you're crossing the Nullarbor. Now, that's a 1,200 kilometre stretch of road. There's 11 roadhouses along the way, but there's not much else there. And so you need to be organised for that. And I'll add, I did all this cycling around Australia before Wolf Creek came out. Now, Ken, I don't know if you've seen Wolf Creek, but it's a story about a man who did bad things in the outback. And then if you're ever alone in the outback, you've got that in the back of your head. And so crossing the Nullarbor, you get to the end of your day, and you've just got knee-high scrub for a lot of it. So to put your tent up somewhere, you think, well, where do I put it? I want to be out of view or out of sight, tucked away. But I could go 6 kilometers either direction, and I'm still possibly visible. So there's a lot of trust in there. And in that instance, there was one day where the headwinds were enormous. So to give an idea, when I'm pedaling, if it's good terrain, a flat road, sealed road, I could sit on 18 to 23k an hour comfortably. Now, if I got a tailwind, I'm now hitting 30k an hour, maybe 33, 35, and most importantly, it's whisper quiet, because the wind's pushing behind you and you don't hear a sound. It's beautiful. The only thing that it is doing is it's blowing the blowflies with you along. So when you're breathing heavily, it's easy to suck one in because it's just hovering around you. And so a few times you've got this fly that's stuck in your throat as you're going along. But the opposite of that is when you get the headwinds. And so a headwind would bring me down on this same flat road down to 15 Ks, 11 Ks. And the worst I got was 7 kilometers an hour. So that's like cycling up an extreme hill. Because remember, I've got about 30, 40 kilos of load on the bike with my equipment, my food, my water supplies, etc. So on this one day crossing the Nullarbor, we'll be starting around 6 a.m. And then by 7, I'd only covered 7 kilometers, and it was taking a lot of energy. So I thought, well, I'll just, off the side of the road, I could see big water tanks, maybe about 300 meters off the road. I'll just go sit out of the wind there, because the wind was howling and it's the noise in your head. It's just screaming at you. So I went and sat down beside the water tanks, and I was there for, got to 10, 11 a.m. and I sit and cook up some noodles. At the time too, I was reading Jack Kerouac's On the Road. So it's an awesome book to be reading in that instance. And, like I say, I was pre-mobile phone. So you're reading, you're writing, you're drawing figures in the sand. So it's beautiful, the stillness of the Australian outback. It was wonderful. The afternoon comes, the wind hasn't abated. So you go, okay, well, it's a big moon. I don't like to do it, but I'll cycle into the night just to get some distance in. Anyhow, nightfall came, I took up some more grub, and then I rolled my mat out. I thought, well, the wind's still howling. I'll just sleep, but as soon as it stops, I'll pack up. Only take me 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm on the road. And ended up falling asleep there. And I woke up at about 3 a.m. The wind was still howling, but I woke up to spotlights on me from a car. And this car's pulled up meters from me. Like I say, I'm a long way from even being close to anywhere. And the door opens and this figure jumps out. And I could only see silhouette because the spotlights are behind him, and he's coming over towards me. And things seem much larger in my mind, but I just remember this lanky figure, these big hands. And you don't know what to do in that instance. Didn't really have anywhere to go. He was sort of, I'm assuming, on me at the time, like as in approaching me. And here I am in my sleeping bag, laid out on the mat. And so a lot of things are going through your head. And so as he's coming closer towards me, he's bent down and he's put his hands out. And I thought, oh, and it's just a sick feeling in your stomach. And he's reached out and he's turned a tap on beside me at the water tank. He splashed his face with water, turned it off, turned around, jumped back in his car. Didn't say a word to me, didn't say anything. Scared the bejesus out of me, and then jumped back in the car and drove off the however many more thousands of kilometers he's got to go to get to where he wants to go. So that was a bit of a freaky experience for me, but it sort of highlights, the remoteness of what's going on out there. It's a vast continent. But to answer your question, really, are there many people doing this? And there's not, but we do tend to cross paths with each other. And I'll tell you an interesting story where I was in Malaysia and I was cycling I've come across from Sumatra, and I was cycling down Peninsula Malaysia towards Kuala Lumpur. And I met this English guy at the Backpackers. This guy's name's Phil. He, at the age of 18, had cycled the length of South America. He'd cycled from London to Sydney for, I think, through the Russian states at that time, but his mum became ill on his journey. So he went home, he didn't complete the journey to nurse her, and she passed away. When I'd met him, he was doing that same trip, but this time coming a different route through sort of India and down. So we cycled together for 1 week, and it was great because you had a buddy, and we're all a little bit different if we're doing this sort of stuff, and we got each other, and he was a wonderful man, an English fella that was so understated in his achievements and how he did things. He was the most beautiful man. Anyhow, he got to KL, and then I was looping back up the east coast of Malaysia, heading towards Thailand. He was heading down towards Sydney, and that was it. I saw him once years later in Sydney, but never really kept in contact with him. And it was now the year 2000. I think we've just had the Olympics. I've just returned from China, Tibet, and I get this flyer in the mail, and it's from Phil saying, would you join us on this trip? And there was himself, that was the expedition leader. There was his girlfriend, Laurent. She was a photographer by trade, not really cycled before. I'd never met her. There was Beck, an English girl. She was a journalist, and she'd done a little bit of cycling. And there was an Aussie guy who was a doctor in Switzerland. Now, he'd pulled out. So they wanted me to be the Aussie doctor from Switzerland, but could I go as a cameraman? I'd filmed my trip through China, Tibet. And initially I said, look, no, because I've just come back from China, Tibet. I'd met this beautiful girl, and I was living the suburban dream. I was now 30 years old, and so decided I wouldn't go. But there's, like I say, you do meet people and your paths cross again. And there was one evening, and I was sitting on the lounge, and I was watching this documentary, and it was called Lionheart. And it was a story of Jesse Martin, who sailed solo around the globe. Now, the only reason he sailed solo around the globe was he just wanted to go sailing, but he needed to get sponsorship and do something significant to get out of school. He couldn't just get a boat and go sailing because he was too young to leave school. So that's how he did this, to get out of school. And I was watching his doco, and there was something in it that just, for all the drama and the heartache and the discomfort he was under, there was something magnetic about that. And I remember thinking to myself when I first started my trip from Cairns to Sydney, that first trip, not even hit Townsville, going, I'd love to cycle the world. And I spent the next 6 years sort of only getting halfway there. Here was this opportunity. And that's when I turned to Kath and I said, I'm going to do it. And I started putting the plans in motion, and then joined Phil, who I knew for 1 year, 3 years earlier. So 1 week, 3 years earlier, and two strangers, to say, I'll join you on this expedition from London to Cape Town. And that was the next chapter.
Fantastic. Well, I must say I love cycling, and the most I've done in one trip is probably about 25 kilometres, which I was, quite proud of at the time when I was doing those kind of trips. And that was usually down Currumbin Creek Road to the end to the rock pools. That's a beautiful cycle down there. It is a fantastic way to see a country. And of course, you're putting yourself out at risk of the elements. I mean, there's, whenever you take on a challenge like this, there's going to be an element of risk. There's going to be an element of fear that can come up. And for those who don't know about Wolf Creek, that was actually a movie based on the real life murders of backpackers in Australia, particularly the cases of serial killer Ivan Milat in the 1990s and Bradley John Murdoch in 2001. So that was, that was around that time, right around 2000, where these backpacker murders were happening in remote locations. And there's been other movies that have come out since Wolf Creek where, based on true stories, where backpackers will come to Australia and they'll go on trips out to Whoop Whoop and then they'll get lost and then they're in the middle of nowhere. They've got no phone reception and, people can die out there, and they have, so you do have to be careful when you're, amongst the elements like that. And there's always going to be that. So with that, what I'm hearing here is that you need a good bike, you need some good knowledge. So what sort of bike did you have, and what kind of things did you have with you? How did you know what to take and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that knowledge accumulates. Like any subculture you get into or hobby you get into, you start off around the edges and then you can get more and more into it. If you're into, skiing or, any hobby, computing, DJing, you buy in and then you realize there's always something more and something better. And one thing, however, that I learned is regardless of how good your gear is, you still got to pedal the bike. Now, there was a situation where after I cycled from Cairns to Sydney, I went and worked for a year and cashed up, as I call it. And so now I bought some better gear. So now I'm buying into this. I bought better gear, better panniers. I bought an actual tent, so I wasn't sleeping under plastic. And so I was now taking things to the next level. And I used that equipment to get me around Australia and up through Southeast Asia. Now, there was a moment where I was cycling in Thailand, and I was 300 kilometers south of Bangkok. And I was meeting a friend in an island near there. And those old school friends that when you've been traveling for a long time, it's just nice to connect with someone. And I'd been away from home for ages, so I was really looking forward to catching up with Michelle and a partner. But to do that, it ended up I had 300 Ks to cover with 2 days to go. And so in my head, I go, right, you've got to do 150 Ks a day. And we're in the sort of monsoon season, so the conditions are hot, they're humid, they're wet. And I was on the coast and I was sort of winding in and out of all the villages and finding it really hard to get some distance covered. And so I found my way out to the highway and started to sort of go more on a straight line and cover more distance. So nightfall was coming and I had done 110 Ks. So in my head, I've still got 40 Ks to go. So it's all right. Just keep pushing on, you'll be okay. But it was a 2-lane highway. And the cars heading south were sort of blinding me with the headlights, and the cars heading north were getting pretty close to me. And at some point, there was a road under construction beside it. So I thought I'll just slip onto this road under construction. And what that meant, it had been graded. It was just dirt, gravelly, but I was sort of out of the line of traffic. And by now it's pitch black. I had my bike helmet safely strapped to the back of my bike. I had a rear tail light, no front light. So if things don't feel right and don't look right, the chances are they're not. And I remember literally even thinking to myself, oh, this is like riding with the Force. Remember Luke Skywalker, blind, used the Force, and I'd feel the road and the road would guide me, but jolted by all the rocks and just the unevenness. But I'm pedaling along and I'm making good distance. So I thought, this is okay, I'll get somewhere. And as I'm pedaling, something just didn't feel right. And do you remember the Roadrunner and Coyote, that cartoon?
Yes, love that cartoon, classic.
Yeah. And do you remember how the Roadrunner always outsmarts a Coyote? The Coyote runs off a cliff. Now, as he runs off the cliff, his feet are still spinning. And then at that moment of realization, he holds up a sign that says, "Oh dear," and then plummets. So here I am, something feels amiss. And I wasn't sure what it was. It's pitch black. And then I had this terrifying feeling that I was falling. Now, I couldn't see how far because it's pitch black. And that's when the oh dear sign went up. And now I'm free falling. And this is serious. This in my mind, I was free falling to my death because I couldn't see what was going on, and I was free falling. And it's interesting. They say, you know how they say your life passes before your eyes. For me, it was an emotion. There was a warmth. There was this a warmth that I'd lived a good life, a full life. But then there was this sadness because I just thought of mum and dad and what it would mean to them, and that was hard. And all this was in a split second because then the front wheel hit the deck and the sound of screeching metal. I got pitched off the bike. Now, the way it unfolded is I was knocked unconscious and I came to. And you sort of triage yourself and things are okay. I managed to get my way out of where I was. And what had happened is the road was under construction and they were building a bridge. They just hadn't built the bridge yet. So I just launched straight off the edge. And the distance, it was only 6 meter fall. And I say only 6 meters because where I was, I could see up and then I could see up. It was about 3 times the height of myself. And so I've just careered straight over the edge. And so the bike sort of front heavy's pitched, the front wheel snapped in half. I've got pitched off. If I'd been a bit to the right, I probably would have landed on some reinforcement still coming up through concrete for the piers. If I was a bit to the left, it would have been in a pile of rubble. Whatever happened, I was lucky for it to happen. All right, so I lived to tell the tale and I got out of it. Now the reason I tell this is because the conversation started with you got to have good gear and a good bike. When I was cycling through China, Tibet, I was doing it with my brother Dan. Dan's a legend. And when we were in China, we're about to fly into Lhasa, we met this American girl, Kath, and she was going to do the same. Now, I had the same bike that I'd used for years and was all kitted up. Dan had a good bike. He was all kitted up. And Kath had this sort of like a step-through bike you'd buy at your local supermarket. You know, the ones where there's no crossbar. She had panniers that this bought from a Dutch guy that were handmade and just wired together. You know, pretty average tent and scrappy bits. But she said, hey, can I join you guys? It's like, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Now, when we set out from Lhasa, about 2 days into it, Dan's back wheel went. And he had to find his way back to Lhasa to sort his back wheel out. So we said, right, I will meet you in this village. We'll be there in about a week's time. So we kept on going. And then Dan met us for that week. So we missed the first week of this trip. And, you know, the only reason we cycled through China was to get fit for the Friendship Highway through Lhasa to cycle to Everest Base Camp. That was our goal. Now, there's 11 passes between Lhasa and Kathmandu, and they're between 3,600 meters and 5,200 meters. Now, 5,000 meters, you've only got 50% of the oxygen you have at sea level. The temperature's plummeting below zero, and you're above the tree line, and it's pretty full on. We cross the final pass, and you get to the final pass. It's called Pangla, and from that final pass, you're looking, and you can see in the vista all these 8,000 meter peaks. It's breathtaking, and you can see there's Lhotse, there's Everest, Cho-Oyu, there's all these 8,000 meter peaks. So you could taste the destination. We're nearly there. So we descend down Pangla, and we've only gotten then the final stretch to follow the river valley to find our way up to Everest Base Camp, which would be there the following day. And I was 40 kilometers away from base camp. So that evening, 40 kilometers away, this all too familiar sound of tearing metal. And on the last flat bit of terrain, literally, my bike frame had snapped. So where my down tube and the rear stays hit the bottom bracket, that's where your pedals are turning, that had torn away. So my bike was trashed. My journey, so it was split in half. Literally, my journey was over. And so that for me was devastating. But on the flip side, Dan could grab a back wheel, so he then had a sturdy back wheel, and they could use more bits and pieces. But where this story goes is, so I had to get out of there, and then that was, there's not much passing traffic, 40 k's from base camp, but I managed to get out of there. And again, it's like, all right, I'll meet you in Kathmandu. Don't know where, don't know when. We'll just meet up. That's how things worked back then, 1999. But Kat, the girl with the step-through supermarket bike with all the handmade gear, was the only one that cycled the duration of that trip.
Wow.
And it's astounding. So despite your best laid plans, at the end of the day, it's what's within, and there's maybe an element of good fortune. But yeah, she completed the whole trip. That's something that Dan and I can't say that. So yeah, it was quite incredible.
That is crazy. I have a couple questions. I've been just waiting for the right time to ask them. So the first question, so I'm not going to ask the first thing that I wrote down yet, because the second thing that I wrote down, I think, is a more important question to ask and explore. Have you ever thought about writing an adventure book around everything you've experienced and all the stories, and how you very effectively explain those stories and draw people in? Like, I've been drawn in this entire time with every story you've told. That's a book. That's an adventure book. Like the adventures of Richard Crowle? Yeah, Crowle.
Mm-hmm.
The adventures of Richard Crowle. I can just hear it. You've got some phenomenal stuff. It could be a children's book. I mean, good grief, you could do a lot of stuff with everything that you know. Like, have you thought about writing a book of some sorts?
In a word, Ken, yeah. I have, and it's something that it's interesting that they say, in a way, celebrate your victories, and that's one thing in life I've never done. I've always felt the narrative has to keep on moving. So after every journey, I've immersed myself back in work and just look forward. Like I mentioned to you earlier prior to this, that after finishing London to Cape Town, in 12 months I had a BMW, which is a baby mortgage wife, and so always moving forward and always focusing on something that's the next thing, but never stopping to reflect. And I believe that's where the book fits into it. And so now, having changed course again with my career, it's something that I think isn't now a question, but it's a necessity, because as part of my keynote speaking, I want to sort of give it gravitas and have something that people can then understand further and more about me, but also, how you can face challenges and deal with uncertainty, because we spend our life waiting. We spend it waiting for a better opportunity, for the perfect time, for more information, for clarity. And in those times you're waiting, just opportunity misses you by. And so I think, I can't wait to write a book, Ken. And I think I'm going to have to.
To be honest, that's something I'm looking forward to coming out, because that's a book I would read. It's hard for me to keep attention when I'm reading a book. So oftentimes books often go unfinished because I just kind of lose interest, or it just gets set aside. And I mean, it's my squirrely brain. But books like that, they hold my attention, and one suggestion I would make for the book is make it an emotional roller coaster for people, because that is going to take them through all the way through. Like, your stories are incredible, especially the story where you were falling off the cliff or whatever that was. Like, oh my gosh, draw that out. Like, make them sit in that moment. That is just absolutely phenomenal. All right, so on to my next question here. Like especially in the beginning. So how did you keep yourself from worrying or fearing the next thing?
Fear was there, absolutely. In the beginning, there was. I keep referring to this term ignorance, and so it wasn't abound, but it's something that if you gave it time and attention, it would be prevalent. So an interesting situation was when I was pedaling around Australia. I would run out of money. I'd need to get more money, and so I got to Perth, and I worked on Rottnest Island, which is an island half an hour off Perth, and worked in a resort there, and that was awesome. And then from there, I was offered a job down in the Margaret River Hotel, and I thought, okay, I'll take that. And these jobs in hospitality, they usually come with accommodation, and that's what I thought was the case in Margaret River. So I went down to Margaret's and rocked up on me pushy. I'm here for work, and I said, where am I staying? They said, oh, there's no accommodation. The campground's just up the road. And I thought, oh, I've just left a good job that had accommodation, everything provided. And again, it's his. I could see it a number of ways. You can either just go, oh, that's a bummer, and so I went up to the campground. It would cost me $50 a week to put my tent up, and back then that was $50 that could keep me traveling for a few more weeks. In Margaret River, it's in the southwest of WA. It's a beautiful wine growing region, but it's surrounded by all these karri forests. Karris are eucalyptus trees. They're 30 meters high before they branch out. They're enormous. So on my first day off, I went cycling out through these karri forests, and about 3 k's out of town, halfway up a hillside, I found this clearing in the shrubs, and I thought, this will do. So I put my tent up, and then I thought, well, make yourself comfortable. Now, Ken, I ended up living here for 4 months in this clearing, 3 k's out of town in Margaret River, in the middle of this forest. And I'd make all these benches and shelves and racks and cooking area. I'd carry my water in milk bottles. I'd get my clothes washed. I had to, always be friendly and nice to the laundry ladies in the hotel so I could get my stuff clean. But it comes back to this idea of fear. And I would say I lived there for 4 months. And for the first 6 months, every night cycling home, it'd be around midnight, and I'm cycling through the forest at night, I was scared. I was scared. Scared because the forest is dark, and the dark, we're told, holds the unknown and the bad guy and bad things. And as I'd pedal along, it was a bit of a dirt track, and then I'd have to peel up the hillside a little bit, then another dirt track, and then up the hillside a bit. And there's one final part where you break through some bush into the clearing. And that was the most petrifying every night, because that's where I was expecting to then come home and see someone waiting there because they've found and stumbled across my campsite. And so then that's where things could go wrong. And so I lived this for every night for 6 weeks. During the daytime, it was okay. But once the darkness came over, I was now in another place. And one night stands out because I'm in my tent, and now I could hear footsteps. So I'm a long way from anywhere. And these footsteps were coming down the mountainside, through the bush, and coming towards me. And then the clap, the breaking twigs. So they weren't being quiet or subtle about it. And it's a bit about similar to that situation I had on the Nullarbor, where this guy's coming towards me, where I feel like, I don't know if I'm just not brave, but they say there's fight or flight. Well, I'm adding fright to it. I was paralyzed with fear. And I thought, if I unzip and stick my head out while I'm exposed, so I laid in inaction. And as these footsteps came drawing up to the tent, you could feel your heart racing. And even though it's dark, it's like I still couldn't see anything. I was blinded within the darkness of my fear. And these footsteps, as they came to the tent, they just kept on going and going and past. And that's when I realized it was possibly a wallaby or something else that have lived there for eternity, and I'm living in their environment. So I'm bringing my acculturalization, that's not a word, but this understanding that the darkness holds fear and the boogeyman. I'm just living in someone else's environment. And so once I got over that, it just was a cloak that was lifted off me. I could understand that, well, the world is essentially a good place. I have faith in humanity. And so that was just an awakening for me. And learning that, it took a lot of pressure off. It didn't take any dangers away, but it just took the pressures off I was putting on myself. And like I say, I lived there for 4 months. And the only reason I left was all these shelves and cupboards and everything I made were out of these big limbs I picked up off the ground and strapped together with rope. And someone had told me the word carry for the carry tree means death from sky. And when I looked up at all these limbs, and around April, the big winds come through down the south there. And so I've gone, hold on, all these big limbs you've picked up off the ground have fallen from there. And then we call them widow makers. And so I don't want to be in my tent at night with a big limb. And so that's when I packed up and I saved a bit of cash and then continued my journey up then the west coast of WA and continued on. But yeah, I lived with the fear, but I sort of at then some point parked it beside me and was had my faith in that validated. I was well looked after.
Wow.
There's fight, fright. Well, I like fright, fight, or freeze. Often people say so. The fright, I guess, is like the freeze, right?
Yes.
Where people, when we get triggered, that's we go into one of those three places. Usually, we're fighting, we're freezing, or we're running away. And yes, freeze would definitely have that fright, that kind of like, oh my gosh. And it's interesting how with both those situations where you had those footsteps, it was such a big thing for you in your head. Whereas for the others, like one guy was just getting water and the other was probably a wallaby. It's interesting how much we can make life hard for ourselves just with our own thoughts. And you were in potentially a dangerous situation, but hey, you survived all of it. So obviously your faith was greater than your fright. Your faith was greater than the fear that you had, or you had the fear and you took action anyway, which we all do in different areas of our lives. We all do that at times because it's part of the human journey. Fascinating. And I agree with Ken. I think I was thinking that too. I was thinking, oh my gosh, this would be a great movie or a great book.
Yeah. And it's so funny too. Like I was just sitting here thinking as you were sharing Aldwyn, I was like, the only thing that's missing right now, like, because I literally feel like I have gone along with you through this journey, and the only thing that's missing right now is a campfire, maybe perhaps a drink or hot cocoa or something like that, and just sit there while you tell these stories. Like this is like, I literally feel like I've just sat and heard an audiobook or something like that. It's so fascinating.
Yes, it's like story time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the Indigenous Australians, they loved, all the Dreamtime stories, etc. Stories do draw us in. We love to hear people's stories, and what an extraordinary challenge that you took on there. I mean, I'm curious about how your health was. I mean, did you end up with a sore back from all that cycling, or did you end up with rash on your from the pants? Or I mean,
So I have to clarify, there is no such thing as a comfortable bike seat. But if you sit in your lounge chair or an office chair for 6 to 8 hours a day, you're going to get a sore butt. And so that's the same with sitting on a bike seat. So what is interesting is for each of the journeys when I set out. So when I first set out from Cairns, when I flew into Hong Kong from China, Tibet, and when I flew into London for the London to Cape Town trip, not one of them did I train for. So it had been probably 18 months that I hadn't cycled prior to the London to Cape Town trip. I was a portly 94 kilos when I waddled out of Trafalgar Square. China, I was in a similar position. I was probably 12, 18 months. I would cycle to commute, but I'd been at home. And I had this flawed logic that why turn, say, a 12,000 kilometre trip into 15,000 kilometres by doing 3,000 kilometres of circles. The beauty was that these trips were long enough to get fit and conditioned along the way. And in each case it did. I mentioned earlier, the sort of one reason we cycled, I'd never really had an ambition to cycle through China, but it was a good way to put a few thousand kilometers in our legs before the big journey of going through Tibet. And you know, it's a good way to replicate what you're doing. A few Ks around Sydney wouldn't cut it. Health-wise, you've then got the issue of, you know, keeping yourself fueled up. And a lot of that is, I was living quite cheaply, but then that's when you eat healthiest. So there's always a lot of carbs, oats, rice, pasta, because I'm cooking my food everywhere I go, mostly, because in a lot of places you're remote. And so not only you're cycling all day, you get where you're going, then you need to put your tent up, then you cook your food and whatever, then you've got to clean up, and then in the morning you pack it up, set out, and then and do it all again. There's a stretch of road up in the northwest of WA. It's called the Gibb River Road, and it sort of goes from Derby, which is 200 k's north of Broome, up to Kununurra. Now you can follow the highway through Halls Creek and Fitzroy Crossing that way, or you can take the Gibb River Road, and it's 620 k's of just remote dirt track. It's like last frontier land. So when I mentioned earlier, I started pushing the boundaries of how far I could take things. I would take these more extreme routes and remote routes, and that was, like I say, that distance. It was built up to wet season, so you're 40 degrees by about 9:30 in the morning. There were 12 gorges along the way, anywhere between 200 meters and 30 kilometers off the track. So that's where I'd be sourcing the water. I'd get up at, say, 4 a.m., cycle through to maybe 9 a.m., and then depending where I was, I'd chase shade around a tree until 5 p.m. and then head out in the evening just to avoid the heat of the day. Or if I was in one of the gorges, you just float around all day and do that. And then there was this one day, and I'd been up early and I was pushing my bike through. There's a lot of bull dust there, so really soft sand. And I'd probably covered maybe 30 kilometers by now, but I've been going for 4 hours. And a four-wheel drive tour bus came up behind me and passed. Now, at best, I might get a vehicle a day past me. So it's pretty remote out there. And you got to love the Aussie drivers. The drivers jumped out. G'day, mate. How you going? And it's like, yeah, good. And you're having a conversation. Meanwhile, in the back, there's one of these mini four-wheel drive things. There's probably 12 backpackers all looking through the tinted window, sitting in their 23 degrees. And the guy, you right, mate? Do you need any water? Oh, look, if you've got a bit, I'll take some for sure. Or do you want a beer, mate? And your first instance is going, no, it's 9 a.m. But then I thought, hold on, you've done a day's work already, mate. You're not going to get offered another beer for a while. So here I am, 9 a.m., having a beer, chatting with this guy. And then really, it's, in a way, I take the mickey, but it's quite adventurous. You see the back doors open of this bus, and you could feel the cold air just spill out from the minibus, and these tourists jump out, and they always want to touch you. Like, I've seen a wallaby, I've seen a kangaroo, now I've seen a cyclist, and they're all bit frigid at first, and then they ask you a few questions, and then later on they're all back in the bus and they've driven off, and you're left there going, all right, keep pushing your bike through the sand, mate. And yeah, it was good like that. So, you're looking after your health with condition to the climate. But then, say, in Mozambique, we got malaria. So, that knocked our socks off. We were near the end of our trip. We'd already stripped a lot of our weight off, and then you throw malaria on top of that, and we were pretty trim by then. So that was a terrible feeling. And so for 3 days, you feel like you're going to, not be around for much longer, and then you come good, and you keep on going. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, as well as just accidents. I had this. So here's an interesting situation where we're in Munich and we're passing through Munich and staying in a campground. In Munich, probably most people know it for Oktoberfest, and a lot of drunk, backpackers, tourists, Australians rock up there. Anyhow, I've got up middle of the night, just gone for a pee, and just not far away on the gravel road that skirts around it. And maybe I've got up too fast, but I've just passed out. So my face has broken my fall. And so I've been knocked out, and I sort of remember coming to cold and wet, because obviously I was lying in my puddle of pee. My face, when I lifted it up, I could feel all this gravel stick to it. And I'd smashed my face up. Oh, it's terrible. So I've gone back to the tent and said, "Oh, Beck, I'm in a mess." And we've gone to the bathrooms, had a look, and it was a mess. The next day, we tried to clean it up, and I've gone down to the hospital. Now, we had travel insurance, and I didn't have my passport on me, but we were all good. And the doctors wouldn't look at me. They wouldn't touch me. There was 3 or 4 different doctors with the white gowns and the stethoscope around it, speaking perfect English, that said, "Sorry, mate, there's nothing we can do for you." So I've gone back and I've tried to clean it out more and straighten my nose up a little bit. And, we set out for a day or two because it was all pretty messy. But it came good, and we kept on going a few days later. Now, we're in the Sudan, and things happened where our Ethiopian visa got declined, and we had to make our way back to Khartoum quickly. So we were sort of using transport for that. And we're in the back of a cattle truck. And the cattle truck, we did a head count. There were 60 people, all the sacks of grains and everything. And across it, you'd have these big metal bars that would scan across it, where when they pull the tarp over, they would have that. And it's big cast iron things. And anyhow, it's all dirt roads there, and you hit a bump and you all fly in the air. You know what it's like when you hit a pothole and everyone jumps up. So we've hit another pothole. We've all jumped 3 foot in the air, but Phil has only jumped 2 foot in the air because his head's gone crack up against this metal scaffold. So just bumped, and it split his head open. Big split like that. It's like, oh. Anyhow, so when we've got the attention of the drivers, they've had a look at him and they've gone, righto. So we're still a few hours away from anywhere, but they're able to get to the town, and they've dropped everyone else off. And then the truck drivers, they've dropped us to the hospital. And I've got some awesome footage of this, and we've gone in there and there's blood on the floor, and it's something like out of the 60s, I don't know. But it's not to the standard of hygiene you'd expect, but they've come in and they've shaved his head back, they've injected him, they've cleaned it out, they've stitched him up, they've patched him up, they've given him antibiotics. They apologise to us when we left for getting injured in their country. They're sorry it happened to us, and the truck drivers drove us to accommodation for that night. And for us, we were quite floored by the whole thing, and that's where I draw the contrast of Germany, in a first world country, and they wouldn't help me for whatever reason. I had insurance papers, and it wouldn't have taken them much time, and they turned me away. And Sudan, which you wouldn't consider a wealthy nation and had very little to offer, offered us everything, including an apology. And so these are the things that restore your faith in humanity. And that's, out of all my trips, that's the most resounding thing that's happened is you have faith in humanity. So, to bring it back to our health and etc., there's a lot of variables and a lot of things can happen. And as I keep saying, you got to live to tell the tale, and it's worth it.
So I don't know what your plans are as far as whether it's just a book or maybe a YouTube series, but I can't let this go because I'm going, okay, you begin the YouTube video, you're outside It's dark. There's a crackling fire that you can audibly hear. And you've got a cup of whatever. And you begin the video by saying, "Follow me as I talk about the road that disappeared in the darkness of the night." And then you just open up the story. It's like, it's like, that's what I'm feeling right now. I'm going, oh my gosh, like this could be like multiple episodes and you can like do like a whole thing around it. Like, holy cow, dude. Like, this is awesome.
It's extraordinary that you went through all those challenges and you look like a perfectly healthy man now. Have you got any injuries that have lasted since then, or how are you?
I don't think so. The going off the bridge, I'd say there's probably long-term damage to my shoulder there, maybe lower back. I had to have the bike seat surgically removed. No, that was just a joke. But
it's like, what?
Yeah, not really. The knees are shot. I've foolishly decided to try and sign up for a half marathon. Now this body's not built for running, but again, I've got to shake things up a little bit, have a change. So no, but it is that idea of use it or lose it. I don't really cycle much these days, and so I live vicariously through these stories. But I've been fortunate that of all that's happened, I'm still pretty much intact. And my wife says I've still got great calves. So
amazing. So what are some of your biggest learnings then around adversity that you can share with our audience who might be feeling a bit challenged by some things right now, or what advice would you give?
The biggest thing is, for me, when I reflect upon things, everything that hasn't gone well has been a blessing. Okay, and you can't necessarily, you don't have all the answers, but if you just take one step. Now, if I go back to the origin of my whole sort of way of thinking, I go back to 20-year-old me, and I lived in suburban Sydney. I was living at home with mum and dad. I was one of 6 kids, and by the age of 12 or 13, we got our own room. Now, I don't know about you, but I had posters all over my room. Pink Floyd was big. I had a whole wall of Pink Floyd posters, some original ones, Jim Morrison, and my room had everything. It was my expression of me. I had all my clothes. I was into writing back then, so I had all my writing, had my trophies, my pennants, my books. And so in the madness of the house, your room's your safe space. And so for me, that's where I'd retreat, and I'd put on my Akai stereo that had a 3-bar LED. Yeah, it was awesome. So that was a good place to be. And I've gone away for a weekend away, and I've returned one Sunday afternoon. And I'm going down the side gate, and Dad's come out the side door, which is odd. When things are something's out of kilter, something's up. He never comes out the side door.
Right.
And he looks at me and says, have you heard what's happened? And now my heart's sinking, because he just looked ashen-faced. And without saying another word, our house is on a sloping block. He's guided me down the side stairs and around the back of the house where there was a spare room, my brother's room, and my room. So 3 rooms lined up underneath the house. And as I'm walking along there, I've seen all this sort of debris in the backyard, but not really registered. Past Dan's room that just didn't quite seem right, and stopped in front of mine. So looking at all those posters and all my possessions and all of who I thought I was, I've stepped in, and I've got broken glass crunching beneath my feet. Everything's charred and ashen, and there'd been a fire the night before that had ripped through the bottom part of the house.
Wow.
So at the age of 20, I had this realization there and then that the only possessions in life were the clothes I was wearing. Now, thankfully, I used to paint T-shirts, and I was into Pink Floyd. One of it was Syd Barrett, and I painted "Shine On You Crazy Diamond." So I had my favorite T-shirt, my Levi jeans, and my Nike runners. But that was it. And it was quite confronting, because it makes you question who you are. When everything's stripped away, it was like, well, who are you, Rich? Because all those things that you've portrayed yourself as, they're no longer there. And you can't really replicate that. I tried to put the posters up, different posters, and rebuild, but it wasn't the same. And I tried to go back to uni, but it wasn't the same. And it was really challenging. But at the same time, it provided me an opportunity, because at uni, say, I was spinning the wheels. I wasn't really into it. And it's not that I didn't like it. First year of uni was the best 3 years of my life. But I really needed to be able to move on. So that's where I dropped out of uni. And then that led me to going overseas. Now once I'd done that, it's not like everything's fixed. And again, when you're in adversity, the game shifted. So you can make decisions that you normally wouldn't. But what you've got to do, or for me, what I have found I've had to do is, when I make a decision, I've got to put a stake in the ground. Say, right, I'm making this decision now because in that instance, I want to now live some experience, because for me, the material was a veneer based upon what I just experienced. Now, I remember being in England and realizing my money's not going to go very far. And it was only 3 weeks later. And I'd been told, things are cheaper, people are friendlier up north. So I looked on the map, and Birmingham was the next city north. So I've hitched there. So an industrial city, thinking, oh, right, now what? I'm 21 years old. I'm in Birmingham by myself and struggling to find my feet. And I remember sitting at the St. Paul's Cathedral in the centre there, and it was a place of solace. Now, I was in a city of 3 million people back then, or 4 million people, and I was lonely. Okay, and I'd quickly rung home, put on a brave face, holding back the tears, saying things are well, I'm all right. But just in that stillness of the cathedral grounds, I thought, well, do I throw it all in? Do you just go home? It doesn't matter, mate. People won't judge you. It's all right. And I thought back to that moment when I made the decision. I said, well, hold on. You said you wanted an experience. Now, just because it's not working out with roses doesn't mean it should be over. And that was a moment I sort of learned to, you've got to really, you got to fight for things sometimes, and you've got to put up with discomfort. We think we make a decision and things just go up, and they don't. But I made things work. I pounded the pavement. I got a job, and one job led to another, and just opportunity came from that. Now that opportunity grew for giving me the confidence to make the decision to fly into Cairns and start this cycle trip. Now, if I didn't fly into Cairns and start this cycle trip, none of the rest of the story would have evolved. And none of that would have happened if I didn't fly to London, if the house didn't burn down. So for me, it was that situation of, and I can say it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And you know, I think of the bike breaking 40 Ks from base camp, and that ate me up so much. And you know, I looked at the first 2,500 Ks, I dismissed it. I just considered the last 40 Ks that I didn't make, and that's what I based my failure on. And interestingly, to get out of there from the Chinese border to get a bus down into Kathmandu, I didn't even feel worthy to sit in the bus. I sat on the roof. That's how bad I was feeling, and I was for months carrying this. And I remember being at a mate's place, a good mate, Chris, and I'm there, and he's cooking up a roast dinner with his girlfriend, and I'd often then rock up and join them, and he could just see some angst in me, and he goes, "What's wrong, Rich?" And I said, "Nothing." And you know, good mates, they won't let you go. He goes, "What's wrong? Come on, mate, what's wrong?" And I just broke down. He didn't say anything other than "what's wrong" twice, and I broke down and just talking about the failure I felt. He still didn't say a word. He just let me have my say, have my piece, and let me work out that that's not a failure, mate. No one sees that as a failure. That's just you deciding to put that on you. And that was the greatest thing that ever happened. And from there, that gave me the courage and belief, well, this London to Cape Town trip, maybe it can happen. And it just takes one small step. and then that small step leads to something else and something else. And life is unscripted, and I'm in a position now where I'm choosing a different career path, and it's not easy. And I've let go of a lot of things in a title and in an income, but I know, based on everything else that's come before me, that if I just show up every day, move forward a little bit at a time, not every day is going to be good. And I've got the unwavering support of my wife, that I've got everything in my court that's going to allow me to get where I want to go. Now, it might not be the same destination I'd set out on, but I'll get there. And so in the face of adversity, you've just got to take one small step. One small step.
Oh, I love that. Wow, so powerful, how attached we get to our belongings, and we can't take any of it with us. So sometimes I can see where a fire could be a blessing in disguise, where you lose all your material possessions, and it really puts things in perspective, because we're so conditioned. And here we are coming up to the festive season, and people are buying and buying and buying.
Yeah.
And we're so conditioned to be so materialistic, whereas really, what do we take with us when we transition to the other side? We take our experiences, we take our memories, we take those courageous steps. That, yes, it is one small step at a time. However, to have those big dreams, that's really what fuels us, right? To get out of this sense of normality that, a lot of people, like I look at people, there's a lot of people like The Walking Dead out there. A lot of people are not inspired by their lives, and maybe because they've lost that mojo, they've lost that, they don't know what they want to do, they don't know what kind of experiences they want, etc. And so we cling to our belongings as some kind of sense of security. And I know I've certainly done this myself, right? As much as I've had some extraordinary experiences in my life, but it's getting present to what's it really all about. What do you want to experience? What, even to travel 30 countries, that would have been extraordinary. To do that by bike, you would have seen so much of the countries that people would have missed. I did a cycle trip in Thailand, actually, which I absolutely loved, going past all the farms with the chickens and, all of that. I just love that, seeing the local farmers and, people weaving in their backyard, and people working in the garden, and, the simple pleasures of life, connecting with nature, experiencing these different cultures. There is so much. We could spend our whole lives traveling and still not see it all, right? There's so much we could do. So, really considering, okay, what do you want your life to look like? At the end of your life, you think of, okay, a third of people die by 65 and 90% die with regrets. Well, what is it that you really want to do? What is it you really want to do?
So on that note, Bronnie Ware has written a book, and it's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she was a palliative care nurse, and it's really powerful. And the number one regret is people not pursuing more career goals and attaining more assets. The number one regret was not living a life true to themselves. And I think back to that kid at uni that was there just because that was expected of us. It was not part of me, and other decisions I've made thinking that's expected of us. And that's sort of compelled this next change where, this is the one shot to then tell my story and my lessons learned, which I could in the classroom to a point, but I'm seeking an audience that listens and doesn't have brain breaks and doesn't throw shit at me. So it's living an authentic life. And there's Dr. John DeMartini talks that in his Values Factor book. And there's a lot of science out there that supports it, that if you can and you're willing to just take one small step, it can lead to big change.
And I can sense your sense of adventure that you had. It's obviously a big value for you, is that adventure and exploration and, courage, so much courage for you to do that solo for most of that journey. That is extraordinary. So absolutely, there's a book and a movie in you for sure, Richard, and I can't wait to see it come out. So no pressure, but we're all waiting.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, good on you. good on you. I think it's absolutely wonderful when I hear these kinds of stories of people, grabbing life by, the horns, and actually just fully going out there and making the most of it. So the future for you, Richard, you're at a transition stage now. You're amazing keynote speaker. For anyone who wants to book Richard for events and talk about adversity, I absolutely, I think you're amazing with what you've achieved. So where to from here?
So that's the pursuit, is to commit myself to the speaking circuit, is what I want to do. On the side, I love my woodwork, and I've got like cubic meters of this rare Laotian rosewood in the backyard, and I make these most beautiful charcuterie boards. And so my time will be spent between speaking and working with these charcuterie boards, which is, I think, a beautiful way to exist. You're being creative and you're helping make a difference at the same time. So that's where I want it to be. Not aspiring. Again, I've sort of stepped away from, I'm going to say big pursuits and ideals, but it's that idea of, there's no corporate ladder for me. That's not my thing. I just have lived. I've had great opportunity, and I think I've got a message that can help others make a difference to their lives, and I think that's an important thing to do. So that's purely where I'm sort of focused on now.
And I think you'll do really well on that path. Now, for those who don't know, what is the charcuterie board?
Good question. So next time you go to a party, you'll find that someone's maybe laid out all these salamis and cheeses on a timber board, and sometimes they might be shortish, maybe 30 inches. So but I make beautiful long ones and bespoke ones that are statement pieces. So it really elevates your table. And you're working with timber. It sort of can be a metaphor for ourselves in a way, because it can be greyed and weathered on the outside, but you add a bit of love to it, and the grain that can pop from it, and the figure and the detail. It's a truly amazing product. So that's where you can tie in your creative skills with some woodworking skills. And
beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's a board for platters. So people could use it as a chopping board too, could they?
As a chopping board, and where we use them as well, a lot of people have larger dining tables, and so like they might have a table runner down the center. These supplement that. If you were to look on Crowle Timber Designs on Instagram, you'll see some of my work on there that I make available. So we have them on little feet that are beautiful and that just elevate it a bit. You can slide things under it. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, wow. Amazing. And that would keep you very grounded too, doing the woodwork. So that's awesome. So you sell them, do you go to markets or anything and sell them?
Not at this stage. It's interesting because I'll build up a portfolio of gear, and then they're often given as gifts or they're bartered, So the day and a half plumbing I had on the roof, that was a charcuterie board. The window that I got made, that was a charcuterie board. So it's back to the old barter system.
Great.
And now you can't get these anywhere. So they're highly valued and highly prized by those that have them.
Fantastic. Oh, I love it, Richard. Now we are coming to the end of the show. Is there anything else you want to share on the topic of adversity?
Adversity, I think something we're all going to endure. We do, and at different times, and it keeps reoccurring because we have different eras and epochs in our life. I have this idea. It's a bit of a philosophy I use, and how sometimes you're in a bit of a pickle or a predicament and things aren't going well, but years later you look back and laugh upon it. Have you ever had that where you've looked back and gone, whatever? So I have this idea, and it's called foresight to retrospect. So when you're in that pickle, what if you can imagine yourself in a few years' time being able to look back upon it and knowing it's really not that big a deal. And if you can frame it at the point in time then I think it just takes the edge off things as well. Doesn't dilute it in a way, and doesn't take away any seriousness. But let's have a foresight to retrospect, because if you know that one day you're going to look back and laugh on this, well, start laughing now.
And overall, looking at your whole journey through all that, what were some of your biggest learnings?
You just got to keep turning the pedal.
Yes.
Just one pedal stroke at a time. You can't see the full picture. Don't even bother. Just turn the pedal and see where you are the next day. You turn the pedal one stroke at a time. Because you know how you said you did that 25K ride, and you know, I often meet people, oh, look, you know, oh, that's amazing. But it turns out they cycle 25Ks every day. Well, if you just did that end to end, can you see how it accumulates? So I feel guilty stealing people's thunder, because I just cycled in one straight line. They do far more riding than me. They just go in circles. So, you know, go in a line. Not that life's linear, and great opportunity unfolds. It really, really does.
Yes. So one foot in front of the other, whether you're, you know, if you're cycling, obviously on the bike, 1 foot in front of the other, or just, you know, keep moving forward, right?
Don't try and work out the end. You'll never understand the end, because too many things come up and you'll be shunted on that track or that track. Just play what's in front of you.
Play what's in front of you. And sometimes there'll be dips, sometimes there'll be falls, sometimes you'll be jumping over things, sometimes you know, you'll have obstacles in your way. It's actually a great analogy of life, with all those challenges you went through. You know, sometimes you'll have some crazy truck go past that'll almost run you over, and you know, a lot of cyclists have lost their life in accidents. So that's a massive danger of being out on the road on your own as well. That, however, the fact is you made it through all that, and it was at the start of, well, there's no social media really in 2000. Facebook started in 2004, so this is pre-social media really, where everyone was on their phones, even more distracted with even more possible accidents that can happen with people on their phones. So really, well done. You know, it's a huge kudos to you for the amazing journey that you've had, and you know, and you're still young, and there's still so much possible for you moving forward. So very excited for the future for you, Richard. Thank you so much for sharing and being our guest today. Do you have a favorite quote or motto you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, I do. And this is, I think, for my big journeys, what underpinned everything. And it's from a guy called Samuel Johnson. And Samuel Johnson was an 18th century literist. Now, I say he was a man of many words, but that's because he wrote the first dictionary. But he used to say, and his saying is, if all possible objections must first be overcome, nothing would ever be attempted.
Wow.
And that's always resonated with me, because when I think about every instance I've been on, and often it's been those nearest and dearest to me. Oh, I'm going to embark on a continued cycling around Australia. And why? And really, and often people mean well for you, but often they're projecting their own fears onto you. And so it's really hard to take that and separate that from not diluting your own goals or ambitions in a way. And so you'll be asked questions that you don't have answers for. For the SciQuest trip, London to Cape Town, you know, we couldn't get a Sudanese visa for the life of us, but we had to embark and start anyhow. And there was people telling us, don't do this and whatever. But we thought we'd keep on going, and it worked out well. Interestingly, we were in southern Turkey when September 11 happened. And we were crossing the border a week later to cycle through Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. And so we were concerned. And there were, you know, there was a lot of objections from home saying, don't do it, don't go there. We're looking at Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade websites, etc. And we thought, well, why don't we just cross into the border and get a feel for it? If it all doesn't feel right, we'll either go back, fly over, we'll be flexible. But you know, let's just be rational, and we're on the ground, we can see what happens. And so signing out of Turkey, you've got what is 22 kilometers of no man's land between Turkey and Syria. Now this, you had a mountain range on one side, you had people living at the foot of this mountain range in shelters made out of bags and bits of canvas, growing vegetables somehow. And they were stuck. They were in no man's land between Syria and Turkey. And we were crossing through this land, and it was quite eye-opening, and then made our way into Syria. And it was about 3 p.m. We got through customs in Syria, and we're now cycling through this village. And a lot of sort of mud buildings built there. It's quite simple in how things were. And school must have just closed. And there was all these young school kids. And they looked like they were in a sort of a scout uniform, so khaki with a little hat and a scarf. And they all looked like, years 6, 7, 5. And as we're cycling along, just eyes open looking, all these kids are just waving, hello, mister, welcome, hello. And nothing changed from there. That was the welcome we got, and it didn't change for the whole of the Mideast. And that's why we realized that a lot of what we're told isn't necessarily what happens and is. And so, it was a great opportunity to see how, you can restore your faith in humanity, and everyone has goodness to offer. So it was a wonderful opportunity.
Amazing. My parents were actually born in Iskenderun, which is down the south side of Turkey. And I've been in that area, and people are very friendly. There's a place called Arsuz you would have gone through down there. It's a very touristy kind of area. And then, lovely people in a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, as opposed to this whole, terrorist thing that's painted out. And yes, of course, there's going to be terrorists in every country, I'm sure. However, most people are amazing. Most people, I would say, are good in general, good-hearted, and do the right thing by people. Although through COVID, we've seen a lot of scammers come out of the woodwork too. So, always do your due diligence as well. There's a lot of desperate people as well that will do things out of desperation, and particularly when it comes to money. So always do your due diligence there. But that's wonderful to hear, Richard. I love those signs that you got along the way where you trusted your instinct and didn't listen to what other people had to say around that too. So well done. And if people want to connect with you, they want to book you for keynote speaking, where can they go, Richard?
They'll connect with me on LinkedIn, would be the best place to connect, and we can talk from there. And look forward to hearing from anyone or just any feedback. More than happy to meet or discuss with you, for sure.
Wonderful. And there it is. Just look up Richard Crowle. Is it Crowle or Crowley? How do you prefer to say?
Crowle, Crowle. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Richard Crowle, that's Crowle, as Richard just said. Look him up on LinkedIn, send him a message through there, and I'm sure he would be an amazing keynote speaker for your next event. Thank you so much, Richard. And now, Ken, over to you. Do you have a quote for us today?
2, as a matter of fact. So first of all, this one is from, I don't even know if I can pronounce this, but it's Moliere, I think is the way you say that. And this quote says, "The greater the obstacle, the more glory in overcoming it." Ooh. And then this one's from C.S. Lewis. "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny."
Love it. Very cool. Awesome, Ken. And where can people connect with you?
Well, first of all, you go on Amazon and you can find this. All right. So if you have not yet, grab my book. This is, it's only 149 pages. This is a very easy read. It's a great book. So if you're tired of all of the diets, the fads, the cleanses, if you're tired of the supplements, the shakes, if you're tired of the system trying to tell you what's healthy and what's not, and you're just, things aren't working, this is your book. This is going to give you a foundation. This is going to show you how to get through the mirage that's been built in front of you by big food and the industry. So grab that book. It's called Mastery, the Anti-Diet Revolution, and you can find that on Amazon. And like I said, it's an easy read. Each chapter has a QR code so you can get into my world. And there's even a bonus chapter at the end there that gives you a list of harmful ingredients to look out for. You can take the book to the store. You can use that chapter as your guide at the store. This is a great resource, you guys. So go and get that book. Lastly, right now, I am giving away my 3 secrets to help you to lose weight, feel energized, and get healthy without starving or dieting. In just 3 powerful one-on-one live sessions with me, I've got a mini educational boot camp that exposes the 3 biggest lies that's keeping people sick, stuck, and overweight, because that's how that industry makes money. And I show you how you can literally feel your body God's way and break free and keep the weight off for life once you have lost it. And so that mini boot camp series can be found at www.masteryweightloss.com/connect. That's my connect page. So the first button on that page, as you scroll down just a tiny bit, is going to be a button to join that boot camp. You got nothing to lose but those extra pounds, and you've got everything to gain in the right way. And it is very reasonably priced, and I did that on purpose so that we kind of so that you don't have to worry about going to ask your spouse to spend the money. It's very reasonably priced. So that's available to you on www.masteryweightloss.com/connect, as well as 3 other links to get into my world. One is a link to book a free strategy call with me. Let's connect. Let me help you unpack what your next steps are. The other 2 is, one is a link to get to my YouTube channel. The other one is a link to get to my Facebook page. So that's how you can connect and work with me, or just connect and get into my world and start following me and what I do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ken. And for those who want to connect with me, you can hop along to my linktree/Aldwyn. It's got all my links there, linktr.ee/Aldwyn. We have some free media resources there. You can check out my website. We have the free Global Good News Challenge. It happens every single month. And we do have a 12-day one for December. Shout out to all our Good News Crusaders around the world who have done the Good News Challenge. You do feel amazing when you share gratitude and good news. You feel amazing in your life, plus you lift the energy of others who see your videos and help to decrease depression and suicide as well by doing that. And you'll see our Fear to Freedom book we had out this year. You'll see a whole lot of really cool links. So let's connect. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't yet. You'll see right there in front of you. That's what it looks like. Aldwyn Altuney Media Queen. Look that up on YouTube. You'll see lots of inspiring content there. Over 1,600 videos now, and some amazing shows on there. Some Media Queen TV episodes as well. Been doing that for the last 10 years as well. And Ken and I have now been doing this show, I think 4 years or so now, Ken.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's quite unbelievable we've been at it for this long.
Yes. And every show has been absolutely extraordinary, including this one. This one's been a very cool show. And I'm going to share some quotes about adversity. There's actually quite a few which are really, really good. I really like this one by Albert Einstein. Adversity introduces a man to himself, or a person to themselves. Adversity introduces a person to themselves. I love this one by Confucius. Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And I'll give you one more here. Sometimes, it's from Zig Ziglar, sometimes adversity is what you need to face in order to become successful in whatever that is that you want to be successful in. Oh, and here's another good one. One more bonus one. Mark Manson quote, the more something scares you, the more you should do it. There you go. That's where the growth happens, right? The more something scares you, the more, yes, if you've got an inkling, a prompting to do something outrageous and go out there, why not go and do it? What's the worst that can happen, right? Just, as they say, would you rather live a lifetime, on your knees, or one day standing up, and what is life if you're not living on the edge, right? So Oh, Francis there. Apologies, my choppy internet connection. Oh, that's okay, Francis. Well, hopefully you can catch the replay. And for everyone who's joined us, thank you so much for joining us live, or if you're watching the replay, let us know where are you joining us from. If you do have any questions for any of us or any comments, let us know. How did you find the episode today? What did you learn from today? What are the gold nuggets that you got from this show? Let us know in the comments. And please share the love. If you think there's someone else that could benefit from this show, we'd love for you to share the love. Check us out on Spotify. We're on BitChute, Rumble, etc. as well. So much love to you all. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Richard, once again for being our guest. It's been fantastic to have you here. Any final words, Richard or Ken, before we wrap up?
Richard, get that book out and start a YouTube series. Seriously. And the YouTube series, literally make it in front of a campfire. Like, it's just, I'm just visioning that. Your stories are perfect. So please don't wait any longer. The world is wanting that kind of, what's the word I want to say? Holistic and real entertainment. Something that's not, doesn't have an agenda behind it. These are real, warm stories. These are real stories that you have experienced. And it's just, there's no way to put it. So anyhow, I will just leave it like that.
Look, thank you for your kind words, and thanks for the opportunity to tell my story. I think it's a good story, and I've got some great insights from you as well. So, Aldwyn and Ken, I will put pen to paper.
Yay. Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. Absolutely. Great real life stories. That's the thing. We miss that human connection, more so now than ever with the crazy AI world. You've got some beautiful, heartwarming stories to share. And I think it gives us all hope. What we've learned here today. And we've got Francis here saying, lovely to meet you in Auckland, Media Queen Aldwyn. Oh, thank you, Francis. Welcome from Auckland. We love your joyful energy as always. Oh, thank you so much. And Francis is backing you there. She says, go, Richard, you got this. You got this. Absolutely. We have total faith in you. So we'll keep you posted on that. And of course, how do you do a book? Well, you do it one chapter at a time, right? You break it right.
You do.
How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Another thing that I'll recommend you do, Richard. So Aldwyn most likely is also going to send you the raw video footage from this episode. I would encourage you upload that to AI, or just do some basic editing and cut out each story that you shared on this episode and use those cutouts as your first YouTube series. So use this episode as your beginning content.
Absolutely. There's some awesome snippets you can grab from this. And with us. Hello, Corinda. Oh, Corinda, sorry we missed you. Yes, we had this as a bit of a last-minute setup show today, so that's why you probably didn't get any warning. But if you make sure that you like our Total Truth Show page, whenever we do schedule a live, you will get notified, or my YouTube channel. Usually if you put notifications set there for the YouTube channel, then you'll get the notifications. So today's topic, Corinda, was all around adversity. I think you'll absolutely love it. So enjoy that. Great to see you anyway. Thank you for joining us. Thank you once again. Have a beautiful day or night wherever you are in the world. We'll see you back for more amazing Total Truth Show episodes very soon. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye. Thanks.